Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me today. I'm very privileged to have a man who has not only been in the classroom himself, but also spent a really good time supporting other teachers who are in the classroom along their journey. With me today to talk about middle leadership and how to move yourself, from feeling in between top management, top leadership, and your colleagues, and feeling like the trader or caught in between, to a point where you can actually have impact within the team that you work, is Gavin Grift. And Gavin, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you for asking me. I've loved to have a conversation with you, David, anytime, and particularly about an area or a subject that obviously that's dear to my heart.
Talking about it being dear to your heart, how did you get into it, all of this emerge? Where did it come from?
Uh, I guess as an author, you you write the book when you're not writing the book, and this Emerge was being written for probably 20 years in some ways, because it was written for me. I wrote Emerge because I wish I had something like that for me when I was a middle leader, because I work with so many middle leaders and I was hearing so many of their challenges on an ongoing basis through middle leadership work that I was doing and cognitive coaching work that I was doing. I I felt like I was limited in how I could help them based on the context that I was hearing a lot of these challenges in. So that started to form more thinking in me, and then two more things probably. The pandemic hit, and I'm from Melbourne in Australia, and I think we were one of the most locked down cities in the world. So it meant I could get off the hamster wheel and I guess consolidate some of my thinking and put some of these thoughts and into place, as well as do some deeper research as well into this area. Yeah, and I think probably lastly, it would be more around the fact that there seemed to be a lot of work on what middle leaders could learn, the skills that they could learn, the even strategies and approaches. But I've always been more interested in the internal. I'm more interested in growth and, genuine learning that happens over time. And most of the challenges I was hearing were not that I didn't know how to use a meeting technique or a decision making process. It was I really am suffering from imposter syndrome, or I have a colleague who's eroding my confidence and I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. So there's really
Hmm.
internal challenges. I call it the kind of leadership that happens when your head hits the pillow. And I really resonated with that because of my own personal experiences as well as those experiences. And obviously, as I mentioned, the time that I suddenly had to, I guess, consolidate and deepen my thinking in this area.
That's amazing. Through the book, you also share some of these personal experiences. I remember the incidents in the car park with a colleague, and just coming to that realization that you are in a job or in a role where so much is asked of you, and there's only so much of you, right, that you can actually give. But then you also talk about something that really resonates with me, the imposter syndrome, talking about how, am I good enough to be here, or do I deserve to be here, and things like that. How do all of those, and I think you described them as different archetypes as well, talking about the pleaser, about the octopus, and, so many interesting ideas in the book. But how do those reflect in a teacher's day-to-day, work, or a middle leader's day-to-day work, and how does it affect their ability to be impactful in their work?
I would think always. I guess the proposition is, and for me, this really did come from the influence of cognitive coaching in my work, as well as some very personal pieces, in my life, and overcoming some, like all of us, when life throws us challenges, having to go having to engage in introspection and quality self-awareness as opposed to rumination, and come out the other side growing from that. So I think all the time, because if you go to this idea that the way we show up and who we show up as is an extension of how we think and how we feel, if that proposition is something that makes sense to people, then this is a daily piece. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're dealing with challenges all of the time or things that are, maybe roadblocks for us. I just mean that we show up based on how we see ourselves, how we're feeling, what we're thinking, and the more we can tune in to what's going on there, the more agency we can develop in our in this context in our leadership, right? So yeah, I think it's so individual, David. Like you just said at the beginning of that, there was a piece that really resonated with you, and that's the thing. I also wanted to make sure that this honoured the differences that exists between individuals for a whole range of reasons, so that they could find a part of this that might be most useful to them in the moment or in moments. Because you talk about the imposter, which I think I frame up as really overcoming self-limiting beliefs, essentially. And I know the imposter syndrome has been around for a long time, and there's a whole lot of thinking about that. But we don't. I mean, I still have that self-limiting belief at times. I think the other thing is I wanted to create something that was more nuanced and reflective of human beings, that I can be really confident 2 weeks and competent and feeling really good in my space and knowing I belong here, and then thrown in a different context where I'm like, who am I to do this? Why are they asking me? I got nothing. What? And so then it appears, right? And so then it's like, oh, okay, I got some awareness here. I know what's going on here. I've got some choice here. These thoughts are just thoughts. They don't define you. Maybe there's another way I need to relate to this. So yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and it's the same for
Mm.
everybody, and it's contextual and it's circumstantial, and it's non-linear, and um, we're talking about what makes people people. So I tried to honour that part because I I struggled in my own and have struggled in my own leadership outside of having a coach, finding someone or something that was able to do that for me. And not everybody has a coach. Not everybody is in the fortunate position of having those kind of resources around them. So I was more interested in writing a resource that supported someone to become their own resource.
Talking about being able to kind of provide people, with the tools and the skills, the knowledge that they need to become their own resource. We've got the upcoming Emerge Foundational Seminar, and there's 3 days, but there's something different happening on day one, from days 2 and 3. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so day one is a day that we've pulled together again to support people in their own journey. For those who've done the 2 day or 3 day foundational seminar previously and are interested in growing this in their own school and supporting middle leaders in their own school, or developing capacity of their staff to even increase their levels of self-awareness. And so those who are interested, who have done that work before, can come along and be certified as agency trainers in Emerge, so that they can lead some of that work using a lot of the resources and intellectual property that sits in this body of work in their own contexts, and go on a journey with me for as much or as little as they like, or or feel compelled to. I think I really want for this work for it to continue to develop its own life form, but also for other people to take it out into the world and do what what they can bring and what they can do with it. And the
Mm.
2 day seminar, which I can't wait for, as always, is the foundational seminar where we really take people through a process of developing heightened levels of self-awareness, even understanding what that is, and then exploring what might be some of their most common challenges, pain points, areas that they feel they could really grow from. So looking at that notion of our challenges can be our greatest opportunities, and then supporting them to work through that with colleagues in a really safe place, to come out the other side with some shifts in maybe thinking and some deeper insights into how they can relate again to themselves as that resource that we were just talking about.
Hmm. The way you describe this, Gavin, it doesn't really sound like this is limited to a certain job title. Would I be correct in assuming that is not really for only, coordinators or like heads of departments or principals only? Would I be correct in making that assumption?
100%. I actually think a lot of what's in here is just useful for life, no matter what identity we have in the work context. But yeah, whilst the book was specifically written for middle leadership is a huge like spectrum. I mean, you've got those who are in informal and formal leadership positions, those who are aspiring to be middle leaders, those who are a little higher in the food chain, if you like, of a hierarchy, but still sit in the middle. I mean, if you really think about it, we're always in the middle. As part of the interdependent communities that we serve in schools, we're always in the middle of someone and something. So, yeah, absolutely. And I know from experience that regardless of title, regardless of where you sit within the leadership profile, that this the workshop in particular will give you great insights regardless.
Okay, that's amazing. So I guess I'm mindful of your time, and so as we start to wrap up this conversation, having written this book and being privileged to work with people who, have participated in the seminars and both days 2 and 3 as the foundation, and then day 1 to get certified. What are some of the biggest shifts that you have seen, from participants? Somebody might be thinking, what could possibly happen? What could I gain from attending this? What are some of the, shifts that you have seen in people's thinking or their self-efficacy? And I know that the book, when I read the book, one of the things that really spoke to me was self-awareness, the power of self-awareness. I think that most people are not aware of how much there is to self-awareness. And so for me, that was the biggest thing, because I thought of myself as someone who was pretty self-aware. But as I read the book and as you broke it down into, different things, I realized, oh, there's more to this than I actually thought. And so for me, that was kind of like the big shift. But I'm just curious to know, in your experience, what are some of the shifts that you have seen in people's perspective or thinking, having engaged with this work?
It's really interesting. I think you might have almost named it because people just genuinely become more self-aware, and in that self-awareness is greater capacity to shift thinking, to change the course of something that they really want to change the course of. Most of the comments that I get, most of the feedback we collect, really, and I mean this not in a contrived way, but it's a transformative experience. Like it can actually transform how someone sees themselves within an identity and can then develop the greater resourcefulness in being able to overcome some of the deepest challenges that they have. And some of the deepest challenges that ordinarily they carry around on their own, but don't necessarily get the opportunity in a really collegial, trusting, supportive environment crash out. So it also normalizes some of that for people, which I just love. But yeah, your point is on point, David, because so bad, isn't it? Because I think Tash Urich's work, she wrote a book called Insight, and she's researched self-awareness, and she was a big influence on my thinking, amongst many others, for this body of work. But I think it was her research that cited that, most of us, if not all of us, think we're self-aware, but actually only 10 to 15% of us fit the criteria when you dig a little bit deeper. And even that is like, wow, okay. So if people are wanting to develop their emotional and relational intelligence, and we know emotional and relational intelligence is integral to our work with people, whether they be little people or bigger people,
Mhm.
then self-awareness is a foundation for those pieces. It's a key ingredient and prerequisite for being able to develop our capacity to relate to others as well as ourselves in a way that supports us in this kind of job. And that's what I hear mostly, going back to your question, is that for
Mhm.
people, that's the bit that connects most to them. It's not just the head stuff, but it's the real heart stuff and the pieces that matter most for them in the work that they do, because the work we do in education is complex, it's hard, it's challenging, it's joyful, it's amazing, it's satisfying, it's incredible, it's highly interactive, it's relentless. So taking the foot off the pedal and putting it on the brake, and having a scaffold, structures, thoughts, and an environment to just explore that in really meaningful ways, that's what's really resonated with people. I
Mm.
feel like it's not then just a set of strategies and approaches, but something that leaves a genuine mark. There's genuine residue that's left behind that they can then take with them and apply to many different situations that inevitably will surface in their journey.
Yeah, for me, it was a huge realization. So, well, I realized I was one of the 90 who thought that they were very self-aware, but were not actually as self-aware as we should have been. But one other thing, Gavin, is the fact that the book not only, it's not just your thoughts that are in the book, or not even just your heart, but it's also based on research. You do make reference to other people's work and lots of research in this area, and that was something that really also spoke to me. I don't know if it's because I'm a math and physics person, but I kind of liked the fact
Maybe.
that there was this was grounded in research. Was that something you did intentionally, and does that reflect in the seminar and also the certification?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important to me in any kind of work we do with peers, and we're bringing ideas to the table. We want to make sure that those ideas also have some kind of foundation that says these are useful, right? It doesn't matter what context that's in. But for me, I think, as I mentioned before, going into lockdown and being in the pandemic, it actually gave me more space and time to do a deeper dive into the research. I also had an amazing advisor, Dr. Kylie Lipscomb, who works out of the University of Wollongong, and she's a leading middle leadership expert in our country, in Australia. And she was acted almost as an academic advisor to me. She wrote the foreword, and so I was really mindful of ensuring that this was yeah this was grounded in thinking, in research, and in theory, that is useful to people too. I do. That's how I consider myself anyway. It's bringing some of the research and some of the evidence and some of the pieces out there that is designed and developed and written by people way smarter than I am, but put it into a context that actually connects with people and something that they can then actually do with it. And I think the workshop that's how we've designed the workshop. The learning design of it is specifically to help bridge that gap.
Nice. Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about it as well. So this is happening in October. Well, you're here at ISPP, the International School of Phnom Penh, first for cognitive coaching, and then the week after for Emerge. And so we're really looking forward to have you. I'll put the link to register for this here. But if you're somebody who is, into any kind of leadership at all, or you aspire to go into leadership, I can tell you that not only is the work meaningful and, very informative, but Gavin also as a presenter is very, very engaging, and he's very empathetic. And so his sessions do particularly respond to the needs in the room. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about Gavin, is that he walks into a room having an idea of where he wants the people to get to, but the way that they get there, and all of that is determined by the needs in the room. And so I really do appreciate that about Gavin, and I 100% would recommend you to attend. Gavin, any last words to our viewers, or somebody who is contemplating, participating, or signing up for this?
Well, thank you, firstly. That were very, very kind words. You say those things now, I've got to live up to them. But yeah, I guess if you're a middle leader who no, and no, I shouldn't say that. Going back to what you said before, but if you're anybody who's thinking about leadership or in leadership or just wanting to again stop and think about aspects of themselves, such as overcoming the need to be liked, or overcoming self-limiting beliefs, or having difficulties work with certain people and how to navigate that space, how to overcome overwhelm, and how to manage or relate to time in a way that doesn't siphon our energy. I mean, they're the big ticket items, if you like, that sit around those archetypes that we explore in great depth, and that we help people develop a greater self-awareness around, so they can develop some genuine agency in addressing them. And they're, as the book outlines, they're some of the most common challenges. So they sound like pieces that people are really interested in and would love to get some further learning in, and some support around, professional support around. Then yeah, I'd love to see you there.
Thank you very much, Gavin. I do really appreciate your time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to, having anybody who is interested in signing up for this. Gavin will be here at the International School of Phnom Penh from the 9th to the 11th. For day one, like he said, is the leadership certification, and days 2 and 3 will be the foundational seminar. I particularly look forward to engaging in this workshop because I value the work that Gavin has put into this. And I find it that even reading the book is valuable. And so being able to sit with Gavin, to go through it and to workshop this will be way more valuable. So please, you'd find the link inside of the description to sign up. And we look forward to having you. Thank you again, Gavin, for taking the time to speak to me. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Um, my name is David with the International School of Phnom Penh Professional Learning Team. Thank you, and until next time, take care. See you.
Thanks, David.